producers of these events, BackStory events. We've got a bunch more coming up if you're into this kind of thing. We'll be bringing out Taj Mahal and Kebmo in August. We're doing one with Living Color. We've got Steve Vai coming out in August 22nd, I believe. So check out backstoryevents.com to see when all of our events are happening. We're good. Okay. No, we're not good. Oh, okay. Hang on one second. I'm going to go help them get these technical difficulties resolved. All right, I'm back. And we're back. We're live. Thank you, Parade Magazine, for hosting us today. Thank you, The Cutting Room. And thank you to all of you folks for coming out tonight. We've got Grammy Award winner Paula Cole joining us. Come on out, Paula.
Hey, everybody. Hey, thank you.
It's Paula and her tea.
My tea, and I'm going
know
to put
what
it
to
on
do
this
with it.
sparkly chair.
Who wants to hold Paula's tea?
All right, I need my tea.
Hi, Paula.
Hi.
Welcome to The Cutting Room in
Thanks.
New York. So I had the privilege of listening to your new album, Ballads,
Yeah, thank you.
more than once. Very excited. I'm sure these folks are going to be really excited to hear it when it comes out August 11th. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the album.
Probably some of you know this story, but I've been waiting to make ballads for what feels like my whole life, because I've been singing standards in the real book my whole adult life, actually since I was about 17, and learning them well before that through my dad. My dad was a professional musician. He was a bass player in a polka band, and he was in Johnny Pritko and the Connecticut High Tones, and they had albums out. So I would go over to the stereo hi-fi, and I'd pull out albums, and I'd see my dad on these albums, and that was something to see your father like that. They were like a mighty wind, you know, with their matching serapes on the beach, holding their instruments, and he had fantastic rhythm, and he played a lot of instruments. He still plays piano beautifully, and I learned a lot of music from him. So this is my music. This is my, I don't know, the swimming pool that I was swimming in most of my years. And somewhere in college, even though I had like a record deal offer from a jazz label, I didn't take it because I kind of made this decision that I wanted to write my own music, and I didn't want to sing Rodgers and Hammerstein's lyrics so much. That wasn't my truth, especially coming from a woman's point of view. So I made that conscious shift to write my own music. Meanwhile, this has been on a back burner for 30 years, and I've been singing on other people's jazz albums again and again and again in a soundtrack. So I'm like, you know, one of the most known jazz singers that you'll never know. Really? Right, so I needed to do it. It's on the bucket list.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So as I listened, I was thinking, well, how did she pick these songs? They must have some special meaning for her. Can you tell us some stories about why you picked some of the songs on the album?
We actually recorded 31 songs in 5 days, and there are 20 songs on ballads. So there's still 11 or 12 kicking around. And I could have kept going. They thought I was such a slave driver. You mean we have to stay longer? We have more songs to do? I was so excited. And also, this was driven by a Kickstarter campaign, and it takes a lot of, time and energy to get that going. And then all my fans, overfunded, and I love them so much that I wanted to do as much as I possibly could. So I forgot the question. I do that.
I was just wondering about selecting the songs for the album,
That's
and did they
right.
have any special meaning to you?
The lyrics couldn't suck, right? There's so many that I love. Naima, for instance, it's a John Coltrane song, and I didn't like Jon Hendrix's lyrics. Not to say that they were bad, it's just they weren't reflective of my truth. So I did it wordlessly to reflect Coltrane more. I think there was an unconscious pull towards songs of joy or songs that I could relate to. Maybe Willow Weep for Me was written by Anne Morel, one of the few standards written by a woman, and it's just badass, has a 12/8 kind of blues feel. They were songs I loved. Some of them I've been singing since I was a teenager, so they needed to come out of me. I also wanted to honor some of the greats, like Billie Holiday and Bobby Gentry and Bob Dylan and Nina Simone. And so I would choose songs that I relate to as lyrics, music, and also paying homage to these amazing artists before me. That's kind of helped me orient and cull. So there's a whole lot to cull from.
And, you dedicated the album to your dad, so I was wondering if maybe some of his favorites might be on there.
I think so. I never asked him that, but I will now. I think so.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about the crowdfunding campaign. Had you ever done that before, and what did you learn from that experience?
This is my second. I also did a Kickstarter campaign for my first independent album called Raven, and I very much wanted to get off of the majors. They still have a purpose, but I'm not Beyonce, and it's not like music is one aspect of my career. I pretty much worship at the altar of music. It's my everything. I can't have a side business of a clothing line or a perfume or something. Music is my everything, and I didn't want to be told how to make it. I didn't want to have people hanging out in the control room of the studio influencing me or giving me anxiety about wanting a hit or pressuring me about releasing an album during a certain quarter. So I was really happy to be free of that, and I've always produced myself anyway. So it was very natural. And that's, let's face it, record labels are going the way of, the Jurassic era, and streaming has affected artists from the Eagles to the Indies. Our royalties are radically different, and you need entrepreneurship. You need to tour, and you need to figure out a way through this crazy music business that was corrupt and corruptible, and we've got to find our way. So I'm finding my way. I'm sure I'm making big mistakes, and you're all with me in this, and I'm really, really grateful for your support.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, how you can sort of turn it around and so you had 30 songs. Maybe you could take some inspiration from your fans or your funders, too, to kind of say, I like that song, or I like this direction. Did you share anything as you were working?
I did not. I was so selfish. Now you made me feel so guilty.
What? Well, next time.
Maybe next time.
Next time. That wasn't a question I had on my list, but hey, So I was also thinking, as an artist, some of the songs, they seem so effortless when you do them, but, as a singer myself, when I was listening to some of the melodies, I'm like, wow, that's hard. One in particular that came to mind was You Hit the Spot, which I didn't know that song, and I'm like, that's a hard melody to nail. And I was wondering, did you kind of grow up with those songs? Did you have to work at getting this together for this album?
That one I didn't grow up with, but I heard Sarah Vaughan doing it, and it was just such a toe tapper, finger snapper, and I just sing along with Sassy. And that's all. It was so happy, and I just needed to do it. So that one actually is just drums and vocal.
Yeah, I was very impressed by how you just like hitting that,
I know.
and your pitch and your tone and everything on the album is fantastic. Do you like? How do you? What's the care and feeding of your voice? How do you take care of that?
Right, the voice, which is this fleshy little thing inside, right? And the more talking you do, the more you wreck it. And like air and dirt and air pollution, and like I was on the Amtrak today, loaded with freezing air conditioning, and then I come out into Penn Station, it's all hot. All that is hard on the voice, but a lot of professional singers, they don't even talk day of show. So I'm finding myself needing more quiet as I go. So it'll be interesting to perform songs after all this talking.
Oh, sorry. It's my fault if she doesn't sound stellar.
I just have to talk in my fairy voice up here, and then I'm fine.
So I was curious too because there's a lot of standards on the album, but then you kind of throw in a couple of songs from another era. You know, you'll throw in
30s to the 60s.
Yeah.
30s.
So
I feel like
just
I'm
because?
Well, I realized that was kind of a theme, was they were great American classic chestnuts, and they were from the 30s to the 60s, and I've always hated labels and genres. Some of the people I mentioned, they span country music or what's thought of as jazz. Nina Simone is categorized in jazz. She's largely gospel, and she sings a lot of folk songs. I don't want to be classified. That's been something I struggle with. So I think all of these songs are classics, regardless of genre. I wanted Ode to Billy Joe by Bobby Gentry to be next to a swing tune, and performed by like a very organic kind of Muscle Shoals style rhythm section that's more guitar based. That was the album I've always wanted to make, and in the past when I tried to make some jazz albums, I was directed, kind of directed to have it be more smooth and finesse and piano based. I wanted to be more rootsy.
You know, I sort of feel like, taking a step back and looking at your beginnings, that, your big hits to me back in the day were not typical songs, easy to classify. Do you sort of feel like you like to be, I don't know, different, like purposefully different?
No, I'm just doing it, and it's hard for everybody. They always want to put me somewhere so they can describe me. Even a stranger, if I'm flying, like, oh, what do you do? I'm a singer-songwriter. Oh, what kind of music do you write? Yeah. Oh, shit, why did I say that? I don't know how to classify.
The good kind.
Modern, meaningful music.
The excellent
I don't know.
kind of music. So I saw you on tour with Peter Gabriel back in the day, and of course thought that was fantastic. And I wanted to know, that was sort of early on for you, and what did you learn from that experience of working with Peter and touring?
I was a huge fan of Peter's. I listened to So like a meditation. I would walk with it. I'd play So, and then I'd play Aretha's Gold, and I'd walk all over Boston with those two albums. And when I heard Don't Give Up, I just felt in all of my being that I needed to sing that song. So being able to sing it with him with some beautiful poetry to life, I was a huge fan. And I did not want to be any kind of baggage to that amazing band. It was an incredible opportunity. He heard my first album, which was called Harbinger, and he heard it before it was released. And Sinead O'Connor was on tour with him on the Secret World Live tour, and she left, and he just asked me to join the tour. I had already seen it with the complex stages and all of that. And like I said, I was a profound fan, so I died, and then I flew to Mannheim, Germany, and I had one rehearsal with Peter, and the first song we did was Don't Give Up, and I'm there with Peter. And I had to be ready for that, and I was. And then I was thrown out in front of 16,000 Germans that night, and they filmed the Secret World Live video less than a week after that. So I guess all my life I'd been preparing for that moment. I mean, when I see it later, I think I'm so shy. I'm holding my hands down to my my thighs, but I loved it so much. That's all. It was amazing. He was amazing.
So after that, did you feel like, wow, I could do anything if I can do this?
I didn't think of it like that. I didn't. It was hard too. I mean, it was this traveling ship. It was a giant ship. They took all their gear. There were two complex stages, a circle and a square, connected by a moving inner portion. If any of you have seen Secret World Live, I don't know. But it was like building a small town inside of an arena, and we would function underneath the stages. And it wasn't just the music, you had to learn all these machinations. It was also 60 men, largely British, and there were 4 women. I really never saw the other 3. And I'm 25, and they're all in their 40s, the band. And it was hard to stay strong and not feel intimidated by all that masculine energy.
Yeah, I could understand that.
Yeah.
So it's the 20th anniversary, or maybe even a little bit after that, of your breakout album, This Fire.
That's right.
And I was wondering, when you look back at that album now, do you feel satisfied with it? Is there anything you would do differently? Like, how do you view that now?
I'm never happy with my piano playing, so I think like, wow, I'm so coarse on my piano playing when I listen to it, and I strive to be better at that the older I get. But you have to forgive yourself because if you read anything that you read when you were 25 that you created and that you wrote, you'd cringe, right? So you have to forgive yourself and let it be this Polaroid snapshot of just where you were at. And that's where I was at. And I was in my 20s, in the 90s, in New York City, and it was an amazing time. It was fiery. There was beautiful music out there, like on the dial. There were still a lot of independent radio stations across America, kind of blending genres. So it was a wonderful time. And I think also like coming off of the Gabriel tour and being such a minority and feeling so token as a woman, like that too drove me. I think if I wanted my own success, I didn't want to be a backup singer. That was one thing I wanted after coming out of that. I would gladly sing with Peter again any day.
Yeah, let's put that out into the universe. Peter, if you're watching on Parade right now. So you produced This Fire, and at the time, you were the first woman in history to solely produce and receive the Best Producer Grammy nomination, right? And I was wondering what or who inspired you to step into that role, and do you think that acceptance of women in the production role has changed since then?
Thank you for asking that question. Definitely Kate Bush inspired me because her music was so incredible. It was so artistic and so different. And I would turn over my cassette tapes, and they would say produced by Kate. And I thought, wow, I feel her hands all over this console. It's just so unusual. And I asked people, was she really that involved? And they said, absolutely. So she did. I found out later that Bobby Gentry also self-produced in a time where women really didn't, especially in country radio. But at that time, sadly, it's still true a lot. You can be so accomplished on your instrument. You can have a lot of vision, and people will still kind of tell you what to do. And I was trying to be open with it, but a lot of times it felt inauthentic, so I just had to do it myself. If I hated it, then it was at least my fault, But I was hating it, and it wasn't me, so I had to scrap it. I had to do it myself. That's just how I felt about it. It's too important.
Did you get any pushback for taking that role from anybody that you were?
Yeah. And some people supported me, and then it was a wonderful thing. But I lost some friends. Yeah,
it's hard. Tell us a little bit about your approach to producing. Is it sort of more organic? Are you really tweaky? Like, how do you
I'm
focus
not
on that?
uber tech. And like producer, you see all these albums through time produced by T-Bone Burnett, produced by whomever. And the title of producer is so varied. It's so different. Someone could be an emotional negotiator between fighting band members, and they're the producer. Another one could be a fabulous phone book. They put together the amazing session players. Another one could be the engineer who's moved into a producer capacity. Another one could be the songwriter and arranger. They are all aspects of being a producer, and some are more other things than others. I'm not the greatest engineer. I definitely need a great engineer by my side, but I've learned a lot. I'm a good emotional negotiator, and I write my music, and I know what I have in mind. So that's the big one. They say emotional intelligence is like the highest area indicator for success. So,
Do you produce other artists too?
little bits, but not wholeheartedly. It's been hard to do everything I want to do. I'm sure we all feel that way, right?
Yeah, for sure. So your hits like "Where Have All the Cowboys Gone" and "I Don't Want to Wait" were, to me, I think they were just brilliantly written and so inspirational. And I was wondering if you could speak for a minute about the inspiration behind those songs. You've probably been asked this question before, but
Where Have All the Cowboys Gone kind of just streamed out of my pen one day, and I'm sure I was picking up unconsciously of the vernacular of Pete Seeger's Where Have All the Flowers Gone, and I just didn't know it, and then out came this poem. And at the time, when I was in a more engineering phase, I had a home studio set up in my bedroom, my apartment, and I made it into a bum ba da bum 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 ba da bum bum, like a rumba feel, you know. Where have all the cowboys gone? Bum ba da bum bum. And nobody liked it, you know. Nobody liked it at all, and I thought, oh, okay. And that went into the coffers, and it bugged me. And it was there in the back of my brain. I thought, that song has potential. And so I re-demoed it a few years later by sampling Ringo Starr at the end of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album when Paul counts in the reprise of that song. 1, 2, 3, 4. I sampled Ringo, right? And then I looped Ringo, and then I added doubled them, and then I added a bridge, right? And it became this thing, and everybody was like, oh my God, that's a hit song. So it definitely had incarnation.
it was all in the production.
And I guess like another initial inspiration for it was XTC, that British rock group, because they were so clever and humor-filled. And I thought that would be really wonderful to write something from a woman's point of view, kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge about gender roles in a story. And so that, yeah, it's a mix of things. I Don't Want to Wait, that was just purely emotion and lightning bolt and from my grandparents, really, yeah.
So you attended Berklee College of Music. We were talking about this earlier, and as a jazz vocalist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a jazz vocalist.
And so I was wondering, what were some of the takeaways from that experience that have stuck with you and helped you?
I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have anywhere to go because I was from this small town, and I went to Berklee, and it was a musical oasis, so I met the people that became my band all through the 90s. Jay Bellarose on drums, who's now like the king of LA session drummer, because T-Bone Burnett found Jay, and Jay is on everything T-Bone Burnett. So I found my band at Berklee. I think I found what I wanted to do. But in the meantime, I was doing all kinds of things like transcribing horn solos and learning solfege and, just becoming a deeper musician. And at the time, it makes you crazy and you wonder why. But ultimately, it makes you just so much richer and more articulate so that you can, it helped me as a producer to articulate what I needed. And I was trying to sing jazz, and I thought I sucked. And I was so mean to myself. I'm not sounding like Chet Baker or Ella Fitzgerald, you know? I was so mean, and nobody does. Now that I'm nearly 50, I know that, but so that was hard, and that also helped me arrive at writing my own stuff.
And you teach there now, right?
Yes.
So what do you teach?
I teach music. I teach, you know what I try to do is help these creative millennials become artists. It's parental, part of it, because you're dealing with a generation younger than yourself, and I'm trying to help them have humility to understand the legacy of music, not just the junk food of top 40 now, but where, there'd be no Pink without Janis Joplin, without Bessie Smith or something. And also to go within and start journaling and writing every week, and we come in and look at songs. And I want them to think like an artist, kind of beyond their confines, beyond their comfort. That's the number one. Also helping young women communicate with bands, because the bands still, unfortunately, are primarily male, and the singers are still primarily female. It's still an equation. It's better. When I was at Berkeley, it was 13-1, men to women. Welcome to the world of the music business, right? It's like world of airplane pilots. And so I went, and then I went to the Gabriel tour, no surprise, 60 men. And so I learned to find my way and be comfortable and stand on my own and not let that deter me and just be good, right? So I'm helping young women kind of find confidence and vocabulary.
I love that. I want to take your class, Paula. So I wanted to ask you about, let's see, I'm going to skip over a couple of these questions. I just wanted to know, did you ever feel like as a musician, at some point in your career that you reached a plateau, and like how did you get past that?
Yeah, I think I've had many plateaus. I've had a few midlife crises, and I thought absolutely I could leave the music business. Or, when my daughter was a little baby, I just wanted to be with her, and she had asthma too, so that I needed to be with her. But this is crazy, but I loved tennis. I found it in my 40s, and I got so distracted by tennis that I thought, I like this more than music. And then it's like the universe just slapped me, and I tore my ACL, and I had to have reconstruction and surgery.
Like,
so no more tennis
you're
for
singing.
me. Yeah.
Sorry, you're singing, lady.
So of course, like any of us, and I've done a lot of self-help reading about this because we specialize. We're a society of specialists, and we encourage specialization. And so we specialize and we narrow, because you can make more money when you do that. And then you are so burnt out on that thing, and you haven't nourished other aspects of your psyche, which are all important, right? Especially if you're type A, right? So what happens? You have some kind of breakdown, breakthrough. And yes, I've had several, and I've thought about leaving it many times. I think probably my fans out there, as much as I try to be strong, they could probably feel that I'm a little vulnerable that way. So I always need the encouragement. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely I've thought about it. It's also really hard. It's really hard to do this.
Do you feel like now that you're, I don't know, are you approaching a new decade? Are you in a new decade? Has that sort of changed your outlook about what you need to do to feel fulfilled as a musician? Or do you feel more freedom to do what you want to do? Or
I guess, yeah. I'm
with you there.
50.
I'm there.
And I don't care about saying my age. I'm 49. I'll be 50 next April. And I feel more entitled to my thoughts and feelings, and I don't care as much. So that I feel freer that way, and that's partly like growing my white hair out and probably swearing more.
Yeah, probably a few other things too. We're not going to talk about those because we're rated PG.
Keep it in.
So I see that you've been doing a bunch of touring, and you will be doing some touring, I'm sure, in support of ballads. But you've been doing some other kinds of performances too. Like I saw you did some music, Joni Mitchell music, and so tell us what's coming up for you.
That's right. I need to keep it interesting for myself. If you just sing "Where Have All the Cowboys Gone" every single night, that's going to burn you out, right? And I do, and I love it, and I love that we all love it together. It's so fun. But every once in a while, I need stimulation. So recently, I performed here in New York with a whole night, a whole set of John Lennon and Joni Mitchell covers, and I just did a show with this beautiful young artist named Sarah Jarose. And she tours with the Punch Brothers, and I'm with her. She just won 2 Grammys this year for Best Folk Album and Best Roots Performance. She's a beautiful banjo player, so we had to tweak the set all like Americana, and I was singing Emmylou Harris parts. It was beautiful. I'm so happy to do that. I love that stuff. And there have been other things too that I can't remember now. I mean, but ballads is so different for me. It's wonderful. I had a piano lesson the other day. I haven't had a piano lesson since 9th grade, so.
What do you need to learn?
Oh, I need to learn a lot. I told you I have an inferiority complex about my piano playing.
Okay, well, and then I was just wondering, are you working on original music as well? I mean, you probably always are, but
you know, not right now. No? Not right now. I'm so, I don't know, distracted. Yeah. And it's a lot of effort just talking about it and putting it into the world that I'm like, I'm out in the world. When I'm hibernating, post-album release, interviews, publicity, that's really the rich inner creative time for writing, I find. And you can't spend too much time in either place. You get really depressed if you're hermiting away all the time as a writer, or you get shallow if you're talking about yourself all the time. I'm so great, you know. And you burn out, too. I don't have the stomach for that as much as some other artists can do it. I'm trying, but it's a dance and it's a balance, and that's the hard part, right? So I'll get there.
Well, great. Yes, I'm sure you will. So I think at this point we're going to see if we have any questions from the audience, and we don't have questions from the audience.
Oh no, that's good. I was just saying yes. I'd love it if you thought of something interesting.
Is there anybody out there who would like to ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you come up and?
Oh, right, because we're live all over the world.
Yes, we are. We're live all over the world. And here you go.
Thanks. It's great to see
Hi.
you. Hi, how are you doing? I'm Dan. I got to see you in '91. I think it's LA and Philadelphia with Jeffrey Gaines. And with your Harbinger album, bought it right away at Tower Records.
Wow.
So it was just such an inspirational album. Curious, what was Hitler's Brothers were 2 really great songs, just, I don't know, you just had the sound. And your drummer, I think, did a kid xylophone for 5 minutes banging on it, and it was just unbelievable. So just was curious about that.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Harbinger was my first album. It was released in 1994. I made it in 92, 93, and that's the one that Peter Gabriel heard. And it was definitely coming from an internal place. Literally, the album cover is me with short, dyed black hair and my nose ring and my boots, and it's very much my beginning of finding myself, and a lot of those songs come from my childhood. Happy Home, so much about, I guess I've been trying to live out my mother's dream a little bit, and that's what the beautiful psychologist Carl Jung says we all do, that the greatest impetus for our lives is living out the unfinished dreams of our parents. And my mother is this beautiful artist. That's another thing on my bucket list, is to help the world see her work. But I know that I've been trying to sing, so the women in my family who never got the shot, my great-grandmother was offered to tour with a symphony. Nope, couldn't do it. It would bring shame to the family. Can you believe such a thing? It was so Victorian, but no. And my mom had us young, and I felt the pressure and the sadness of that. So that informed songs like Happy Home. Growing up in a small New England town, Rockport, Massachusetts, and being a bit perfectionistic but struggling with myself, that's all in Bethlehem. The quietness, feeling suffocated by the tininess of my quintessential New England village, right? Knowing that I needed to come to New York City. Those were the biggest impetus for Harbinger. And that really makes so much sense now, looking back on it. Hitler's Brothers was just, constructive anger. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other another question?
Hi, Paula.
Hi, Vincent.
Your voice is, I've rambled on to you about it 100 times. The range that you have and the runs and your mixture, your placement, what are your warm-ups like? Do you warm up a lot? How often? Like, for how long? What do they consist of? Just stuff like that.
Yeah. And the voice, it changes every day. Like today, after that Amtrak ride, I'm feeling a little hoarse, but how do you maintain such a difficult, little fragile thing? I try to refrain from talking. I drink a lot of liquids. Throat coat tea by traditional medicinals. I should buy stock in it. I drink it. I drink a whole box a gig. You see me drinking that between gigs, between songs. And warm-ups, I'm not the best at that stuff. I wish I were better. But I think singing at a low volume allows you a lot more facility if you want to be able to do runs. Don't go hard on the volume. Come back on the volume, and you have so much more control over your voice. Also, time doing this, it's mini musculature. Keep doing it. You'll get older and you have more facility. You'll find if you back off on the volume in those, in your chest voice, you can slip into that head voice more easily. This is technical stuff, but it's been a physiological learning for me in my body over the years. So it's hard to explain, and I still feel like I'm struggling with it, and I always want to be better, But yeah, I don't think all of you out there want to do vocal runs, do you? Right, and they're distracting too sometimes from the melody, and that's also another matter of taste. Like to sing the melody is so important. Like to refrain from that masturbatory stuff sometimes is really important. Triple axel, stick to landing. That's what it feels like. 10, perfect 10, But that's not what it's about for me. I want to feel. It's about the lyric.
How about one more question? Okay. Sorry, it's hard to see all of you.
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
I want to ask specifically about I Believe in Love
Sure.
and I Want to Be Somebody. Those are both songs that have stayed with me for a long time.
Wonderful, yeah.
What is the catalyst of those songs? They're very specific, the journey of those songs, the story that those tell. Would you mind elaborating on that?
Not at
Okay.
all, thank you. I recorded those two songs you mentioned for my Amen album, and I wanted to, I guess I always have wanted to be authentic to where I am right now, and Amen was that, and I was influenced a lot by Bob Marley and Marvin Gaye, and some of the hip-hop at the time that was more socially conscious music, weaving spiritual themes. I'm not uber spiritual, but I believe in the mystery, and I wanted to weave that in, and that was my concept album. It was really, I think, maligned and misunderstood, but I'm proud of it today, and I was weaving a lot of soul into that. I Believe in Love was a personal story of this disaster of a relationship that I was just continually drawn to, but I wanted it, like, apart from the lyric and the heartbreak of that, I wanted it to sound big, like a Barry White production. Now, you know, hey baby, that. You think of Barry White like that, but he was brilliant. He was a brilliant arranger. He couldn't read music, but he would walk around to the whole orchestra in the LA studios and say, violin number 1, you need, that A flat right there, you need to work. He was brilliant. His arrangements were brilliant. and yet there's this groove, right? Wah guitar, grooving rhythm guitar, and groove and rhythm section, which I love groove, I love roots music, and yet these anthemic strings, and I wanted that. I wanted anthem, I wanted dancing, I wanted hope. So I was really coming from a production place of wanting it to sound like Barry White. And Be Somebody, I was channeling a story I had read in the news about a little boy, real sad story, and meditating on our world on that way, and also being moved by the autobiography of Malcolm X, which I think every high school history class should read. I think it's so incredible. And so verse 2 is pulling out the autobiography of Malcolm X, and with a hopeful, simple, clear, positive anthem for all of us. I want to be somebody. I want to make a difference. For we are all children of the mother, right, or the father. And then T-Boz from TLC, she sang the background vocals on that. And unfortunately, I was going through like an anti-Lilith world, and I was probably the darkest horse of the lot, and they were kind of beating me up everywhere I went. So it didn't have its day in the sun, I feel like it deserved. So I'm really happy that you talked about those songs. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Paula. I feel like we could talk to you for like another hour, but we really want to hear you sing, and we don't want to wear out your voice. So, so if you're watching live, we're gonna stop for a minute and let Paula just take a quick little break and reset the stage, and then we're gonna come back on, and she's gonna play some songs for us. So hang tight for a minute.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back.